The college football playoff rankings dropped last night, and because our problems in Tallahassee are pretty limited these days, FSU fans responded in typical FSU fan fashion when Florida State's ranking came out. Now, we've talked about how the rankings don't matter, and you shouldn't pay attention to them. So maybe we're breaking our own rules here, but they especially don't matter this early. However, one of FSU's best players had an epic reaction and shared his thoughts on the rankings, and we'll show you that in just a minute. As you know, Florida State came in fourth, Ohio State first, UGA second, Michigan third. Here's the big issue with the rankings. There's just no consistency, which I understand, and ESPN's commentators talked about this. When you're ranking 25 teams, you're not going to be able to apply the same standard all the way across the board. Head-to-head may mean more in some situations. Resume, strength of record may mean more in others. How you looked, game control, that term they invented in 2014 to screw FSU, that may matter in other situations. So it's impossible to do across 25 teams. I get that. But you'd think they could at least do it in the top four. For example, Florida State's close win against BC hurt them. But what about when UGA struggled with Auburn, was only up on Vandy by 10 points in the fourth quarter, and trailed by double digits against South Carolina at halftime? Three awful teams that UGA played very close. What about when Ohio State barely beat Indiana, and they struggled for a half against Youngstown State, and then didn't look great against Wisconsin this last week either? And they ranked Ohio State number one, who I do agree has the best resume, and they said that's why they ranked them number one. But FSU easily has the next best resume, and heck, they're even number two in ESPN's strength of record statistic. But when they showed a graphic of the strength of schedule, they left FSU out. I'm showing you that on the screen right now. They showed the strength of record, where Ohio State's first and Georgia's seventh and Michigan's ninth. But for some reason, they just maybe couldn't fit FSU into the graphic. But Florida State has the second best strength of record. Now, I don't quite understand why this was the way they did things, but to show this graphic and not put FSU in it, it makes sense because Florida State should have been ranked second if that's the metric you were judging on. Now, if the metric you were judging on was who's looked the best week over week over week, it would probably be Michigan. If you're judging on who has the historical value of being number one, it probably should be Georgia. But if you were going on resume, I don't understand how Florida State wasn't number one. The College Football Playoff Selection Committee chair said something that made him sound like a complete idiot. But before we get to that, I do want to let you know that our Miami tailgate tickets are on sale right now. They're discounted this week by 20%. If you didn't tailgate with us for LSU in Orlando, if you didn't tailgate with us for Clemson up there in South Carolina, if you didn't tailgate for Virginia Tech, make sure that you get out to this Miami tailgate. It is going to be a ton of fun. We'll be right next to Doak Campbell Stadium. All you can eat, all you can drink. We have an absolute blast. We'll have TV out there. You'll be able to watch some of the other games as well. Again, tickets are discounted this week. The link is in the description, but it's literally fsumimiDFNS.eventbrite.com. We're in a new location, closer to Osceola, not the Legacy Walk for this weekend. Going to try something new out. Make sure you get your tickets. Guthrie's will be out there for sure. We'll have a great time. All right. Brendan Sonnone tweeted, FSU, per the College Football Playoff Selection Committee chair, Boo Corrigan, is below UGA and Michigan, partially because their matchup against LSU, their marquee win was earlier in the year. He said the win over LSU, the win over Duke, kind of front-loaded their schedule, if you will. They've looked really good. So remember in 2014, I mentioned this, when they made up the term game control to screw us over then? This year, it's a problem that Florida State won a massive top 5 game against LSU early in the year. I guess if you beat LSU last week, it would matter more. Talk about it, the SEC, it just means more. Wins against the SEC only mean more if you beat them mid-year. Alabama's getting a ton of credit for beating LSU this weekend after it happens, I'm sure. Ole Miss gets credit for it because it was mid-season. But Florida State won in week 1, and so it's an issue? I don't quite understand that. I don't quite understand that logic. Wasn't it week 2 that Texas beat Alabama and that they're getting a lot of credit for? The best win of the year? Don't quite understand it, but maybe week 1 wins are an issue, and we need to schedule a little bit better and schedule teams in week 2 or 3 so we get the credit for it. Shout out to Brett McMurphy as well. He tweeted that the selection committee's rationale for its top 4 was Ohio State, 2 top 25 wins, best resume. I agree with that. I think Ohio State should be number 1 in the country, just for what it's worth. Georgia's the eye test, no top 25 wins. Michigan's the eye test, no top 25 wins. FSU, 1 top 25 win, second best resume, but it happened in the season opener, so we've already forgotten about it. I appreciate media and folks like this who do call out pure incompetence and do call out the idiocy that is the College Football Playoff Selection Committee using a double standard, using a standard that just isn't quite lined up with reality. Now, we told you about an epic response a Florida State superstar had. Check out what Keon Coleman said when he was asked about the rankings and whether or not he'd be watching them on Tuesday night.
The first college football playoff rankings are coming out on Tuesday. Is that something, are you going to watch the show? Are you going to pay attention at all, or is it just about the work and worrying about y'all?
What you mean, like?
The first, they put the college football playoff rankings starting every week this week.
What day? It's a show?
Tuesday night on ESPN, yeah.
I probably ain't going to watch it. NBA should be on.
He clearly didn't care. And I want to tell you, Keon might be the most unintentionally funny player that we've had at FSU since Jameis. But Jameis also kind of knew he was funny, and so he played it up a little bit. Keon's just unintentionally hilarious. We showed you that Waffle House video. He's got a great video on the Battles In right now that you can go check out, talking about what certain coaches he would dress them up as Halloween. Like if he was picking their Halloween costumes, who would wear this? He shouts out the Grinch in there. A ton of funny stuff. A cowboy, everything else. Go check that out on the Battles In YouTube and Instagram and everywhere else. But I love the response. Rankings are for us to worry about, not for the players to worry about. They don't care. They care about the work, and they care about the culture that Norvell is building, and that culture is one that doesn't care about the rankings. When I asked Coach Norvell over the summer what he was telling his players when they start to get the positive attention from the media, and if he was trying to use that as a way to motivate him, he basically said, no, TJ, we can't accept their praise when they're high on us, but turn their praise away when they're low on us. We need to stay consistent. We need to worry about our expectations. And so the media can say awful things about Florida State, and they don't care. The media can say great things about Florida State, and they don't care. And that's a great way to emphasize the internal expectations that you have for a program. Because if you embrace the positive from the media, but push out the negative, then you're unstable. You're double-minded. You're not necessarily living up to your own standard. And that's what Norvell's trying to get across to the team. I love that Keon said, the NBA will probably be on. There's a great game on somewhere that I want to watch, and that's what I'll focus on tonight. I personally don't care about the NBA in October, and I know we're in November now, but I'm glad that Keon watched that instead of the idiots on ESPN try to justify where they had FSU ranked. Now, the rankings are biased. They're dumb. They stink. But they're also made for TV. They're made to stir up drama. They're made for us to do these dumb reaction videos for. But they legit mean nothing until December. To tell you the truth, I don't know how you guys feel about this. Maybe tell me down in the comments, but I would love if the top 4 ended the exact way we saw them last night. Now, would I love to be number 1 in the country? Of course. I'd love that respect. I'd love that honor. But I'd love to play Ohio State. They're the team that probably worries me the least in the top 4. I know they've got some good wins. I don't think Notre Dame's that good. I don't think Penn State's very good. And so Ohio State just doesn't really worry me that much. I don't think their offense is very good. I think they've got some playmakers, Marvin Harrison Jr. They're very good. But I don't think that that's a team that I'm as worried about as I am with Georgia, as I am with Michigan. And so I'd love if the way that it came out last night was what finally happened. I don't want to be 2 or 3. I don't want to go out to the West Coast. I don't want to play Georgia first. I'd probably prefer not to play Michigan first. But the issue is that if Florida State goes 13-0, I'd expect them to be number 3 at worst. So it's unlikely that the rankings will shake out like this, but it will all work itself out. And wherever Florida State winds up, they'll go to the playoff if they win their next 5 games. and they'll compete for a title, and they'll try their very best to go 2-0 in that playoff, and we'll see what happens. We won't remember back to the rankings that came out on Halloween night back in October, but we will talk about them today. Keon's response is probably the response we should all have looking at the rankings. Now, again, that was asking before the rankings came out, but they just don't care. They don't care about the bias. They don't care about the hate. They don't care about the praise. They just want to win games. They're 3 days away now from taking on another opponent, and we will talk about that tonight. On our preview show, we'll talk about Pitt, and we'll talk about the Noles trying to get to 9-0. Make sure you're locked in with us. Make sure that you get your Miami tailgate tickets before they're gone. We appreciate you guys. We love you. We are so thankful for the support. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.